Over the last few years, Audi R8 prices have been falling from pandemic highs, but something interesting is happening right now. Prices have stopped falling, and in some cases, they're starting to flatten out. At the same time, the V8 Audi R8 has been discontinued, and while Audi is rumored to bring the R8 back around 2027, it's expected to return with a very different formula, likely without the naturally aspirated V10 that made the original one so special. So the big question for buyers is this: have Audi R8 prices finally hit a floor, or is this just a temporary pause before the next move? And more importantly, are we approaching the last window to buy an Audi R8 at today's prices? Now I feel that this is especially relevant for first-time buyers. Both the V8 and V10 offered a great introduction to the next step. Perhaps you plan to buy the R8 V8 as your first sports car, or the R8 V10 as the next step after your entry-level sports car. Now potentially all of that could slip away if prices rise. Let's find out. In this video I'll break down the actual market data for V8 and V10 prices, how the R8 trend compares to its competitors, and what this all means for future prices, so you can decide whether now is a good moment to act or whether patience still makes sense. We start with the V8. It's the oldest variation, but especially the manuals are rumored to offer strong values. Let's see what the data says. We start with the US V8 automatic market. The price trends for the pre-facelift and facelifted models show a large similarity to the general market trend. A price surge during the pandemic, a top in 2022 and a decline, first quickly and then more slowly. Nothing special so far. But look what happened in 2025. Prices flatlined for both models. The facelifted ones are down by 0.6% and the pre-facelifted ones are up by 1.8%. Both changes though can be the result of chance, since they are not statistically confirmed. Especially for the facelifted models this is relevant, because the market is quite small, and you can see that the data can be quite volatile as a result of this. Now for Germany I don't have as much data as for the US, but enough to draw some conclusions. We can see namely that prices have been stable or have been creeping up since September 2023. Last year the facelifted cars displayed an increase of 6.2% and the pre-facelifted ones of 2.6%. Out of these two changes, I advise you to rely on the latter one, because the facelifted market is very small. Moreover, the 6.2% increase isn't statistically confirmed, whereas the 2.6% increase is in a grey area. So what about the manuals? Are prices surging in that segment? Not quite. We can see that prices in this pre-facelift market have been stable since 2022. Compared to last year they're down by 3.9%, but this price change could be the result of chance. Supply in the facelifted market is extremely low, as there are usually only less than 5 clean title cars for sale. This is also reflected in the confidence interval and the high volatility, so we'll skip that trend. Switching to the German market, we can see a more convincing trend. Prices are up by 23% during last year, and this change is statistically confirmed. Still, the market is small, so you need to interpret the trend with care. For the data lovers out there, this is how the situation looks like from a mileage perspective. As you can see, there is an increase, but also some uncertainty. So values for the V8 models flatlined during 2025. That's good news for owners, but perhaps less good news for buyers who are waiting on the sidelines. Let's continue now with arguably the most desirable option, the V10. Prices are stronger over there, right? Right? Over here we have the trends for the first generation facelift and pre-facelifted automatic base models. I'm not going to cover the Plus and GT models because supply is too low in those segments. The price pattern is somewhat similar to the V8s, a decline and a flattening in 2025. Looking at last year, we can see a decline of 4.2% in the facelift market and an increase of 4.6% in the pre-facelift market. The facelifted cars are a lot rarer than the pre-facelift ones, and you can see that this results in a higher price volatility and larger confidence interval. I looked a bit deeper into this decline, and it seems to be predominantly driven by cars with an above average mileage. Low and mid-mileage cars were fairly stable. The increase for the pre-facelifts is on the border of being statistically confirmed. It is then also visible for all mileages. The German market is slightly larger, so we're going to split it up between the pre-facelift and facelift cars. Starting off with the first group, we can see that the markets are significantly more stable than in the US. Prices for the base models are marginally higher than in September 23 and 2.2% higher than last year. Yet, the change isn't confirmed. Prices for the GTs are 7.4% higher, but this needs to be interpreted with care as the market is small. Unsurprisingly, this change is also not confirmed. It's therefore fair to assume price stability. Continuing with the facelifted model, we can see that prices were falling till the beginning of 2025, but turned during last year. Base models are up by 5.6% and plus models by 3.7%. The latter increase isn't confirmed and the first increase is in a grey area. The R8 V10 manual is probably the most sought after variation. They are, however, also extremely rare, resulting in unreliable price trends in both the US and Germany. I'm therefore going to skip them. We'll continue now with the second generation. Also in this generation we have a pre-facelift and facelift model, and several model variants like the base, plus, performance, GT and competition. Some of those are available in 4 and 2-wheel driven drive configurations. We start with the pre-facelift versions in the US, but won't cover the competitions because supply is too low in that market segment. Price trends aren't too dissimilar to those in the V8 market. Prices declined after the pandemic top and then flattened. Yet, especially for the base models, the flattening seems to have occurred already in 2024, resulting in a nice bottom. Compared to last year, the 4-wheel driven base models are up by 2.4% and the 2-wheel driven base models by 1.1%. The difference between the two isn't meaningful. The plus models increased by 5.5%, and this is the only change on the chart that's statistically confirmed. The increase applies to all mileages. In Germany, the price changes are slightly more negative. Plus models are down by 2.4% and base models by 1.7%. Both changes aren't statistically confirmed. So let's continue with the latest models. Starting with the base models, we can see that the trends for the 2 and 4-wheel driven variants started to diverge in 2025. The 4-wheel driven variant is up by 3%, whereas the 2-wheel driven variant is down by 2.3%. Yet, a clear flattening is visible in the trend. The 4-wheel driven variant is more rare than the 2-wheel driven variant, so take this into account when looking at the trends. Switching to the performance model, we can see an increase of 4.5% in the 2-wheel driven version and an increase of 3.2% in the 4-wheel driven version. The GT market is even smaller, resulting in a lot of uncertainty and a large confidence interval. The price trend shows an increase of 4.1%, but please interpret this with care. Now we'll still have a look at the German market before we aggregate the numbers. Starting with the base model, we can see relatively flat prices during 2025. The 2-wheel driven variant is down by 1.5% and the 4-wheel driven variant is up by 0.2%. Both changes aren't confirmed and could be the result of chance. The performance models clearly flatlined during 2025. We're looking at a plus of 1.5% for the 4-wheel driven variant and minus 1.2% for the 2-wheel driven variant. Strong results. Let's put now everything together and bring this back to the main topic. Have R8 prices bottomed? Over here we have the results aggregated by engine, generation, facelift and transmission type, broken down by country. Now there are two interesting observations we can make here. First, there are subtle but important differences between the US and Germany, which can be categorized into 3 sub-items. The German depreciation rates fit with a more traditional pattern, in which the newer cars lose more than the older ones, whereas the new cars in the US did better than some of the older ones. Complementing to this, we saw that the German rates have been more stable for the older models than in the US, where they followed the market trend more closely. And finally, the German market shows one clear outlier, the V8 pre-facelift manuals, whereas the rates in the US are all fairly similar if you take into account that there's some randomness involved. So it seems that the V8 manuals in Germany already started to increase. And now the second point. On face value, the R8s are doing pretty well, and you could argue that prices have bottomed. The median price increase is 2.2%. Yes, an increase, not a decrease. So that's it, case closed. We're at the bottom? Not quite, at least when it comes to the US market. If you manage to sit through all of the graphs, you might have noticed that they all look fairly similar. irrespective of the model and age. All models increased during the pandemic, topped in 2022 and corrected, first quickly and then more slowly. In 2025, most models flatlined or even increased a bit. There's a reason why all the values look similar. R8s have been following the market trend. Over here we have the average year-over-year price changes for the general US sports and supercar market and the US R8 market. And as you will see, they behave very similar. Both markets declined after the pandemic, resulting in a higher yearly depreciation rate. From 2023 onwards, the market started to recover. The Audi R8 a bit quicker than the general market, but the confidence interval is also much wider, encapsulating the market trend. In the beginning of 2025, there was a minor decline in the Audi R8 market, and this brought the trend back to the level of the market trend. For the remainder of 2025, the trends were at similar levels and moved in the same direction. The year-over-year price change was almost identical. And remember that the market trend includes a variety of cars, like the 911s, Supras, Ferraris and Miatas. More concretely, if you looked at my other videos, you would have seen that also models from other brands like McLaren, Ferrari and Lamborghini flatlined, and that the trends are similar to those in the Audi R8 market. So all of this indicates that R8 values flatlined indeed, but that this isn't the result of R8 specific features. The R8 seems to be following the market trend, meaning that values flatlined due to systemic factors. The same might not apply to the German market. In Germany we saw that values have been stable since the end of 2023, and this of course helps to build confidence in the stability, especially since the newer models followed a more traditional depreciation pattern. Moreover, the V8 manual saw a big price surge. Unfortunately, I don't have enough data to compute a market trend for Germany, so we can't redo the analysis that we did for the US. And that brings us to the next point: future prices. As I always say on this channel, this is pure speculation, as I don't have a validated model that can make reliable predictions, so you should interpret all the comments related to future prices as such. As long as there's such a strong connection between the market and R8 values in the US, it seems unlikely to me that prices bottomed. Only when we see idiosyncratic factors play a larger role in the trend, we can start to speak of a bottom. The bottoming case for Germany is stronger. First generation models have been stable for a long time, while newer cars declined and V8 manuals soared. Unfortunately, I don't have enough data to do a market comparison. And with that we arrived at the end of the video. Now if you enjoy this data-driven way of analyzing car prices, but would like to see a video for a different car, head over to my channel. Over there you find data-driven market updates for a large variety of cars. Can't find the car you're looking for? Let me know the name of the car by commenting it down below in the comment section. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I'll make a video about it. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again in 2 weeks for a fresh market update.